My husband asked me to donate one of my kidneys to his dying mother. "Prove your loyalty to this family," he said, while holding my hand across our kitchen table. 4 days after the surgery, he walked into my hospital room, but he was not alone. Beside him stood a woman I had never seen before, wearing a dress so red it looked like it had been dipped in fresh blood. Behind them, a nurse pushed my mother-in-law in a wheelchair, and she was smiling for the first time since I had known her. My husband David tossed a manila envelope onto my chest. It landed right on top of my surgical bandages. Inside were divorce papers already filed, already processed, already destroying the life I thought we had built together. But David made one critical mistake. He never asked where my kidney actually went. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. My name is Rachel Harper, and I need you to understand something before this story goes any further. I am not a victim. I was never helpless or stupid or blind to what was happening around me. I made a choice to see the best in people, and sometimes when you do that, the worst in them takes advantage. That does not make me weak. It makes me human. I lost my parents when I was 8 years old in a car accident outside Richmond, Virginia, on a rainy October night that changed the entire trajectory of my life. One moment, I was in the backseat listening to my mother hum along to the radio, and my father laughed at something she said. The next moment, there was the scream of brakes, the shattering of glass, the terrible silence that followed the catastrophe. I spent the next 10 years in the foster care system, bouncing between 6 different homes in 3 different counties. Some families were kind but overwhelmed. Some were cold and counted the days until I aged out. None of them were mine. When I turned 18, I left the system with $700 in savings from various part-time jobs, a high school diploma, and a scholarship to a community college 2 hours away in Norfolk. I studied accounting not because numbers made my heart sing, but because it was practical, stable, predictable. I needed predictability after a childhood where nothing ever stayed the same for long. After graduation, I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, looking for a fresh start somewhere nobody knew my history. I found work at an upscale boutique in South Park called Laurel and Sage. We sold imported linens, handmade ceramics, and French soaps that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The work was not difficult, and the pay was modest, but I liked being surrounded by beautiful things. I liked watching people choose gifts for the ones they loved. It made me feel close to something I had lost. David Harrison walked into the boutique on a Thursday afternoon in late September 2.5 years ago. He was looking for a birthday gift for his mother, he said. Something elegant but not too flashy. Something that said, "I know your taste." I showed him a collection of Italian silk scarves hand-painted with botanical designs. He spent nearly an hour examining each one, asking questions about the dyes and the fabric of the artist. I did not push him toward the most expensive items, even though my commission depended on it. I simply answered his questions honestly. He looked at me differently after that, like he was seeing me for the first time. "You are not like the other salespeople here," he said as he handed me his credit card. "Most of them would have upsold me 3 times by now." "I do not believe in selling people things they do not want," I replied. He smiled. "That is a rare quality." He came back 2 days later. Then again the following week. Each time he bought something small, a candle, a set of linen napkins, and a ceramic bowl. Each time he stayed a little longer, talking to me about everything and nothing. By the 4th visit, I knew he was not there for the merchandise. He asked me to dinner on a Friday night at a steakhouse I had only seen in magazines. I wore the nicest dress I owned, a simple black shift I had bought at a thrift store, and altered myself. I felt out of place among the leather booths and the waiters in ties, but David made me feel like I belonged. He asked about my life, and I told him the abbreviated version. Foster care, community college, working my way up. He listened without pity and without judgment. When I asked about his family, his face grew serious. "My father passed away when I was 14, he said. "Heart attack. My mother Patricia raised me alone. She built a successful real estate development company from nothing. She is the strongest woman I know." I could hear the admiration in his voice. The way he spoke about his mother made me ache for my own. We were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. David said his mother preferred simplicity because she thought big weddings were wasteful displays. I told myself I did not mind even though I had dreamed since childhood of walking down an aisle in a white dress with flowers in my hair. What mattered was that I finally had a family. I finally belonged to someone. Patricia Harrison was not warm, but I told myself that warmth could be earned with time and effort. She was a tall, angular woman in her late 60s with steel gray hair always pulled into a tight bun and eyes that assessed you like a balance sheet. She owned a mid-sized real estate firm specializing in commercial properties, and she ran it with precision and control. Sunday dinners at her home in Myers Park became our routine. I would cook her favorite meals from recipes I found online or in old community cookbooks at the library. Pot roast with root vegetables, lemon chess pie, buttermilk biscuits from scratch. She would taste a single bite, push her plate aside, and say, "It is fine, Rachel, though I can tell you used store-bought broth. Homemade makes all the difference." I would smile and thank her for the advice and promise to do better next time. David would squeeze my hand under the table. "She is just particular," he would whisper later. "She does not mean anything by it, but she did mean something by it. She meant that I would never measure up, that I was a charity case David had brought home out of pity or convenience, that my lack of pedigree, my lack of family, my lack of money made me fundamentally less than." I tried for 2 years. I bought her gifts that disappeared into her closet never to be seen again. I volunteered to help with her company's filing during tax season. I laughed at her pointed comments about women who trapped men with pregnancy or women who married above their station. I told myself that if I was patient, if I was kind, if I proved my worth, she would eventually see me as a daughter. Then Patricia got sick. It started with fatigue that she attributed to long hours at the office. Then swelling in her ankles. Then nausea that made her skip meals. By the time she finally agreed to see a doctor, her kidneys were operating at less than 20% capacity. Chronic kidney disease stage 4 progressing rapidly to stage 5. The nephrologist, a calm woman with graying hair and tired eyes, explained the options. Dialysis 3 times a week for the rest of her life, or a transplant. The waiting list for a deceased donor kidney in North Carolina was averaging 4 to 5 years. Patricia did not have 4 to 5 years. She had months, maybe a year if she was lucky. David was tested first. Of course he was. He was her son, her only child, her entire world. I sat with him in the waiting room at Carolina's Medical Center while they drew his blood and ran the tissue typing tests. He held my hand so tightly I thought my bones might crack. "What if I am not a match?" he whispered. "What if I cannot save her? Then we will find another way," I promised him. 2 weeks later, the results came back. Incompatible. His blood type was O positive. Patricia's was positive. The antigens did not align. The transplant coordinator, a kind-faced man named Robert, explained that immediate family members are not always matched, that biology does not guarantee compatibility. David took the news like a physical blow. He sat in the parking lot of the hospital with his head on the steering wheel and cried. I had never seen him cry before. It frightened me. They tested Patricia's sister next. Not a match. Then her 2 cousins from Asheville. Not a match. Then family friends, business associates. People from her church who barely knew her but wanted to help. Not a match, not a match, not a match. Each rejection felt like a door slamming shut. Patricia started dialysis in November. I would see her sometimes at the clinic when I stopped by to bring David lunch. She looked smaller each time. Frailer. The vibrant, commanding woman who had intimidated me from day one was fatting. David was unraveling. He stopped sleeping. He would get up at 3 in the morning and sit in the living room staring at nothing. He started drinking more, whiskey in his coffee, wine with lunch. I tried to comfort him, but he was somewhere I could not reach. Then I made a decision. I got tested. I did not tell David at first. I did not want to add another disappointment to the growing pile if I was not compatible. I scheduled the appointment during my lunch break, gave my blood, filled out the forms, and answered the questions. Do you feel pressured by anyone to donate? No. Do you understand the risks? Yes. Are you doing this of your own free will? Yes. The call came 3 days later. Robert, the transplant coordinator, asked me to come to his office. I sat across from him in a small windowless room that smelled like antiseptic and old coffee. He opened a file and looked at me with an expression I could not read. "You are a match," he said. "A very good match. 6 out of 6 antigens. Blood type A positive, negative cross-match. You are as close to a perfect donor as we are likely to find. I stared at him. The odds of a non-related match this close are extremely rare, he continued. Maybe 1 in 100,000. You are her miracle, Mrs. Harrison. I told David that night. We were sitting on the couch in our apartment watching a cooking show neither of us was actually following. I reached for the remote and turned off the television. I have something to tell you, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I got tested. For your mother, I am a match. He turned to look at me, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then tears started streaming down his face. He pulled me into his arms and held me so tightly I could barely breathe. You do not have to do this, he whispered into my hair. But she is your only chance, I thought. How could I say no? How could I live with myself knowing I had the power to save her? So I said yes. I said yes because I loved David. I said yes because despite everything I wanted Patricia to see me as worthy. I said yes because the transplant coordinator and the psychologist and the surgeon all assured me that living donors go on to live normal, healthy lives. I said yes because I believed that this act of sacrifice would finally make me part of the family. The evaluation process took 2 months. Blood work every week. CT scans. Chest x-rays. Meetings with nephrologists, surgeons, and social workers. They needed to ensure I was healthy enough to lose a kidney. They needed to ensure I understood the risks. Infection, bleeding, blood clots, chronic pain, hypertension. The possibility that my remaining kidney could fail someday, leaving me in the same position as Patricia. I signed forms acknowledging each risk. I met 3 times with a psychologist named Dr. Ellen Rosenberg. She was in her 50s with short silver hair and the kind of steady gaze that made you feel both seen and safe. Why do you want to donate to Rachel? She asked during our first session. Because my husband's mother is dying and I can help, I said. Do you feel pressured by anyone? No, I said, but that was not entirely true. There was pressure, not overt, not spoken, but it hung in the air every time Patricia looked at me with those assessing eyes. Every time David came home from the hospital looking more defeated. Every time I thought about what would happen if I said no. Dr. Rosenberg leaned forward. What do you expect will happen after the surgery? I thought about it. I expect Patricia will recover. I expect David and I will grow closer. I expect that I will finally feel like I truly belong in this family. She made a note. Rachel, I need you to understand something. Donation is a profound gift, but it does not guarantee the outcome you are hoping for. Relationships are complicated. Sometimes after the surgery is over and the recipient recovers, the dynamics shift. The donor can feel taken for granted. The recipient can feel uncomfortable with the debt. Family tensions can surface. I want you to go into this with realistic expectations. I nodded. I understand. But I did not understand. I could not imagine a world where saving someone's life would lead to anything other than gratitude and love. I was cleared for surgery on a cold morning in early February. The surgery was scheduled for March 9th, 5 weeks away. Plenty of time to prepare physically and emotionally. Plenty of time for everything I thought I knew to fall apart. David was attentive in the beginning. He took time off work to come with me to pre-op appointments. He bought me books about organ donation and recovery. He would hold me at night and tell me how much he loved me. After this is over, he said one night in the darkness of our bedroom, I am going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. We are going to travel. Paris. Italy. Anywhere you want to go. I am going to take care of you the way you are taking care of my mother. But 3 weeks before the surgery, something shifted. The phone calls got shorter. He started working late. He would come home at 9 or 10 smelling faintly of perfume that was not mine. When I asked, he said he had been at client dinners. Real estate meetings, industry events. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. But there was a knot forming in my stomach that I could not untie. Small things stopped making sense. He started sleeping with his phone face down on the nightstand. He would step into the hallway to take calls. He became irritated when I asked simple questions about his day. I told myself it was stressful. His mother was dying. I was about to have major surgery. Of course he was on edge. Of course he was distracted. March 9th arrived with gray skis and a cold rain. We drove to Carolina's medical center in silence. David stared out the window. I tried to make conversation, but my words fell flat. Patricia was already in pre-op when we arrived. She had been admitted an hour earlier. The plan was to remove my kidney first, then immediately transplant it into Patricia in the adjacent operating room. Timing was critical. A kidney can only survive outside the body for a limited time. I changed into a hospital gown in a small curtained bay. A nurse named Kelly started my IV. She was young and chatty, trying to distract me from my nerves. "This is a beautiful thing you are doing," she said as she taped down the IV line. "Your mother-in-law is very lucky." "She's not technically my mother-in-law yet," I said. "We have only been married 2 years." Kelly smiled. "Well, she is lucky either way." David stood by the window texting. I watched him. "Who are you texting?" I finally asked. He looked up. "Just updating people, my aunt, some colleagues. People have been asking about my mom." I nodded. The anesthesiologist came in, Dr. Patel. He explained what would happen, the medications, the breathing tube, what I would feel when I woke up. "Do you have any questions?" he asked. I shook my head. He patted my shoulder. "You are very brave." The transplant coordinator, Robert, came by with final consent forms. Even though I had signed these weeks ago, he reviewed them one more time. Risks, benefits, acknowledgement that this was voluntary. Then he placed a new document in front of me. "This is standard protocol," he said. "In the rare event that the primary recipient is deemed medically unfit at the last moment, we need authorization to redirect the organ to the next compatible patient on the National Registry. It ensures the organ is not wasted. This almost never happens, but we need your signature just in case." I looked at David. He nodded. "Just a formality," he said. "Sign it so we can get this done." I signed. That signature would change everything. They wheeled me toward the operating room at 7:15 in the morning. David walked beside the gurney holding my hand. "I will be right here when you wake up," he said at the doors to the surgical suite. "I promise." He kissed my forehead. It felt rehearsed. Mechanical, the operating room was freezing, bright lights, stainless steel. The surgical team moved around me efficiently. Dr. Laura Chen, the transplant surgeon, leaned over me. "We are going to take excellent care of you, Rachel," she said. "When you wake up, you will have given someone the gift of life." The anesthesia started flowing. Dr. Patel told me to count backward from 10. 10, 9, 8. The world started to blur. 7, 6. I heard voices in the hallway, a woman laughing. Then David's voice was low and warm. 5, 4. I tried to hold on, I tried to hear. 3, 2. Darkness took me. I woke up in a place I did not recognize. The ceiling was not the soft white of a private recovery room. It was institutional beige with water stains in the corner. There were 4 beds in the room, separated by thin curtains. A television mounted on the wall played a talk show no one was watching. The pain hit me in waves, a deep ache in my left side that radiated through my entire torso. I tried to move and gasped. A drainage tube snaked out from under my bandages. I could feel the pull of it inside me. Where was David? He promised he would be here when I woke up. A nurse came in. Not Kelly, someone older with tired eyes. "How are you feeling?" she asked while checking my vitals. Confused, I managed to say, "Where am I?" "This is the general recovery ward," she said. "Your surgery went well. Dr. Chen will be by to see you soon, but I was supposed to be in a private room. My husband arranged it." The nurse glanced at my chart. "I do not have any notes about that. Let me check with the charge nurse." She left. I lay there trying to piece together what had happened. Hours passed. The pain medication made everything foggy. I drifted in and out of sleep. When I was awake, I watched the door waiting for David. He never came. On the second day, a different nurse brought me a phone. "Your friend has been calling," she said. I did not know I was allowed visitors yet. I took the phone. It was my coworker, Jessica, from the boutique. The only person in Charlotte I had stayed close to. "Rachel, oh my God, I have been trying to reach you for 2 days," she said. "Are you okay?" "I am fine." I lied. "Just tired." Jessica hesitated. "Listen, I do not know if I should tell you this, but I think you need to know. I saw David yesterday. At that new Italian place on Providence Road. He was with a woman. They were holding hands. My heart stopped. What did she look like? Blonde, late 20s maybe, gorgeous. They looked really close to Rachel, like really close. I am so sorry." I hung up. I could not breathe. The monitors started beeping. A nurse rushed in asking if I was okay. I nodded even though I was not okay. Nothing was okay. On the 4th day after the surgery, David finally walked into my room. He was wearing a charcoal suit perfectly tailored. His hair was styled. He looked rested. Behind him, an orderly pushed Patricia in a wheelchair. She was wrapped in a cashmere shawl, looking pale but alive. And beside David was a woman I had never seen before. Tall, blonde, wearing a dress the color of arterial blood. David walked to my bedside. He did not ask how I was feeling. He did not apologize for not visiting. He simply pulled a manila envelope from his jacket and dropped it onto my chest. It landed on top of my surgical bandages. The weight of it made me wince. "These are for you," he said. His voice was flat, businesslike. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. "Divorce papers, filed 3 days ago, the day of my surgery. I do not understand what I whispered. Why?" The blonde woman stepped forward. She had a diamond ring on her left hand, a large emerald-cut stone that caught the fluorescent light. "My name is Amanda," she said. "Amanda Thorpe. David and I have been together for 7 months. I have been in London finishing my MBA, but I am back now. Permanently." She placed a hand on her stomach, a small gesture but unmistakable. "We are expecting. The baby is due in October." I looked at David. 7 months. That meant he had started seeing her in August. 2 months before Patricia was diagnosed. 4 months before I got tested as a donor. He had been planning this the entire time. "You used me," I said. My voice was barely audible. Patricia leaned forward in her wheelchair. Her face twisted into something cruel. "Did you really think my son married you for Rachel? A girl from nowhere with no family, no money, no prospects. You were useful. You were a match. That is all you ever were." The room tilted. I thought I might be sick. David pulled out his wallet and took out a thin stack of bills. He dropped them on the bedside table. $5,000, he said. "Enough for a deposit on an apartment and a few months' rent while you get back on your feet. Sign the divorce papers without contesting and we part ways quietly. No drama, no lawyers." I stared at the money. $5,000 for my kidney, for 2 years of my life. For every Sunday dinner I cooked, every slight I endured, every piece of myself I gave trying to earn their love. "I am going to the police," I said. Tears were streaming down my face now. "I am going to tell them everything." "Tell them what?" David's voice was cold. "That you voluntarily signed consent forms, that you were evaluated by medical professionals and cleared, that you donated of your own free will. There is no crime here, Rachel, just a marriage that did not work out." Patricia gestured to the orderly. "Let us go. This room smells like disinfectant and desperation. It is bad for my recovery." Amanda took David's arm. They turned toward the door, all 3 of them, walking away, leaving me there broken and alone. David had his hand on the door handle when it swung open from the other side. A woman in a white coat walked in. She was in her early 50s with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp, intelligent eyes. She looked at the monitors, then at me, then at the 3 people trying to leave. "What exactly is going on in here?" she asked. Her voice had the kind of authority that made everyone freeze. Who authorized subjecting a post-op patient to this level of stress? "She is 4 days out from a major surgery. Dr. Vivian Cross," I read from her name badge. She was the head of the transplant department. "Mr. Harrison, I presume," she said, looking at David. "And Mrs. Harrison Sr." She nodded at Patricia. "I need to speak with all of you." Now, David tried to recover his composure. "This is a private family matter, Dr. Cross. We were just leaving." "You are not going anywhere," Vivian said. She turned to the nurse hovering in the doorway. "Get security up here. No one leaves this room until I say so." She pulled a tablet from her coat pocket and tapped through several screens. Then she looked up at Patricia. "Mrs. Harrison, your transplant was canceled." The words dropped into the room like stones into still water. No one moved. "What are you talking about?" Patricia's voice was shrill. "I feel fine. The kidney is working. I can tell." "You feel better because of aggressive pain management and supportive care," Vivian said, "but you do not have Rachel's kidney. Immediately before the scheduled transplant, your final blood panel revealed a severe infection and an undetected cardiac arrhythmia. If we had proceeded with the surgery, you would have died on the table. The surgical board made the decision to abort." David's face went white. Patricia gripped the arms of her wheelchair. Amanda took a step back, and the kidney Vivian continued looking directly at me. "Now where it go? When a harvested organ cannot go to the primary recipient, protocol dictates it be offered to the next compatible patient on the National Transplant Registry. Thanks to the consent form you signed, Rachel, we had full legal authority to redirect your kidney. It saved a life, just not the life you thought it would." "Who?" I whispered. "Who got my kidney?" Vivian's expression softened. "The recipient has given permission for me to share his identity with you. His name is Harrison Sterling." The name meant nothing to me at first. Then Amanda gasped. "Oh my God." David stumbled backward into the wall. Patricia made a choking sound. Harrison Sterling was one of the wealthiest men in the Southeast, a real estate developer who had built half of uptown Charlotte, a philanthropist whose name was on hospital wings and university buildings. A man who had quietly disappeared from public life 2 years ago due to a mystery illness. Now we all know why. He had been dying of kidney failure. David found his voice. That is our kidney. We paid for the surgery. We have rights. A human organ is not property, Mr. Harrison, Vivian said with barely concealed contempt. It is not a commodity you can store in a refrigerator and use when convenient. Your wife donated out of the goodness of her heart. The law protected that donation by ensuring it saved a life. It did. She turned to me. Mr. Sterling's executive assistant contacted me an hour ago, Rachel. He wants to move you to a private suite immediately. He wants to personally thank the woman who saved his life. All expenses will be covered by the Sterling Foundation. I looked at the 3 people who had used me. David's carefully constructed plan was falling apart in real time. The kidney he had manipulated me into giving was now inside a billionaire. A man with power and resources and gratitude. Patricia's face had gone gray. She was processing the reality that she would go back on dialysis. That her son's scheme had failed. That I had been her only chance, and now that chance was gone. Amanda looked at David with something close to disgust. This was not the man she thought she was getting. This was a desperate fool who had gambled and lost. Security arrived within minutes. Vivian explained the situation calmly. These individuals are causing distress to a post-surgical patient. Please escort them out of the building. Do not allow them back into this wing. David tried to argue, tried to claim spousal rights, but the divorce papers he had so smugly filed 3 days ago meant he had no legal standing. He was not my husband in any meaningful sense anymore. They removed him first. Then Amanda walked out on her own with her head high but her confidence shaken. Finally, they wheeled Patricia out. She looked back at me once. Her eyes were full of something I had never seen before. Fear, the door closed. The room went quiet except for the steady beep of the monitors. Vivian sat down in the chair beside my bed. I am sorry, Rachel, she said quietly, for what happened, for what they did to you. But I want you to know something. The choice to redirect your kidney was not just protocol. When I saw your chart, when I saw that you were a 26-year-old woman with no family donating to a woman who clearly did not value you, I made sure that if anything went wrong, your gift would not be wasted. I made sure it would go to someone who would honor it. I started to cry, not from sadness, from relief. From the sudden, overwhelming realization that someone had protected me. Thank you, I whispered. She squeezed my hand. Rest now. Tomorrow your life is going to change, in ways you cannot imagine. The move to the executive suite happened the next morning. The contrast was startling. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charlotte skyline. A private bathroom. A sitting area with a leather couch. A television. Fresh flowers on the table. A nurse who was assigned only to me. Within an hour of settling in, I had a visitor. A man in his early 40s wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather portfolio. My name is Marcus Whittaker, he said, offering his hand. I am Mr. Sterling's chief legal counsel. He asked me to convey his deepest gratitude and to inform you that all medical expenses related to your surgery and recovery will be covered in full. Additionally, he has established a trust fund in your name. Marcus opened the portfolio and showed me documents. A trust worth $500,000, set up to provide income and support while I recovered and rebuilt my life. I cannot accept what I said. This is too much. Mr. Sterling does not see it that way, Marcus replied. You gave him his life back, Rachel. He takes that seriously. He always repays his debts. Over the next week, I met with Marcus several times. He explained that Harrison Sterling wanted to help me in more concrete ways. He had learned about my situation, the divorce, the betrayal, the manipulation, and he was angry on my behalf. We can pursue legal action against your husband, Marcus said during one meeting. What he did manipulating you into donation under false pretenses potentially constitutes fraud. The consent forms you signed were obtained through deception. I thought about it. Part of me wanted revenge. I wanted to see David suffer the way I had suffered, but another part of me just wanted to move forward, to close this chapter and start fresh. What would a lawsuit accomplish? I asked. Marcus leaned back in his chair. At minimum, financial compensation for emotional distress. At maximum, criminal charges depending on what we uncover. David had been careful, I knew that. He had covered his tracks, made everything look voluntary, but Marcus was a skilled attorney with resources. If anyone could find cracks in David's story, it was him. Let me think about it, I said. While I was thinking, Marcus was already investigating. He pulled David's financial records. Court filings, property records. What he found was illuminating and infuriating. During our 2-year marriage, David had transferred several assets into my name. A commercial property in Dilworth, a stake in his small real estate investment company, even the house in Myers Park where Patricia lived. Why would he do that? I asked Marcus when he showed me the documents. Tax evasion, Marcus said. He was shielding assets from creditors and the IRS. He assumed you would always be under his control, that you would never question anything, that when he divorced you, he could simply reclaim everything without you knowing it existed. But now, by filing for divorce without including these assets in the settlement, he has legally forfeited his claim to them. The property in Dilworth alone is worth $1.2 million. I stared at the paperwork. David had been so arrogant and so confident in my ignorance that he had walked away from a fortune. My advice, Marcus said, is to sign the divorce papers without contest. Let the decree finalize quickly. Once it is official, he cannot come back and claim the assets. They are yours. And then we pursue a separate fraud case for emotional damages. I nodded slowly. A plan was forming. A plan that did not involve dragging myself through a public trial but would still ensure David paid for what he had done. Do it, I said. Sign the papers, let him think he won. Then we take everything. I met Harrison Sterling 3 weeks after the surgery. He came to my suite accompanied only by Marcus. He was in his mid-60s, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that comes from decades of commanding rooms. Even in his weakened, post-surgical state, there was strength in him. Rachel said, extending his hand. I cannot tell you what your gift means to me. Before the transplant, I was preparing to die. Now I am preparing to live. We talked for over an hour. He told me about his granddaughter, Emma, who had died 5 years ago in a car accident. She had been 24, close to my age. He said I reminded him of her. The same quiet determination, the same resilience. I want to help you, Harrison said, not just financially. I want to mentor you, teach you what I know about business, about building something that lasts. You have been knocked down, Rachel, but you are not broken. Let me show you how to make sure no one ever uses you again. Over the next 6 months, Harrison became the family I had never had. He taught me about real estate development, about reading contracts and market trends, about negotiating and standing firm. He introduced me to people, lawyers, accountants, investors. He paid for me to take business courses at Queen's University. He treated me like the daughter he had lost. And slowly I transformed. I cut my hair into a sharp professional bob. I traded my thrift store clothes for tailored suits. I learned to walk into rooms with confidence. I learned to speak with authority. I learned to look people in the eye and see them for who they really were. The divorce was finalized in July. David never contested it. He thought he had won. He had no idea what was coming. In August, Marcus filed a civil lawsuit against David and Patricia. Fraud. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Unjust enrichment. The evidence was damning. Emails between David and Amanda dating back 7 months before my surgery. Text messages where David discussed his plan to keep me compliant until the transplant was over. Financial records showing he had hidden assets in my name. And most damaging testimony from Dr. Ellen Rosenberg, the psychologist who evaluated me. She testified that if she had known about David's affair and his intention to divorce me immediately after surgery, she would have halted the donation process. That informed consent requires full disclosure of relationship status when the donor and recipient are family. The case never went to trial. David's attorneys advised him to settle. He agreed to pay $250,000 in damages. Patricia was forced to contribute another $100,000 from her estate. But the real victory was not the money. It was watching David realize that the naive girl he had used was gone. That in her place was a woman who knew how to fight. Patricia's health continued to decline. Without a transplant, she was back on dialysis 3 times a week. Her heart was weakening. The medical bills were crushing her. She had to sell her company, sell her house, move into a small assisted living facility. David tried to care for her, but he was drowning. His relationship with Amanda fell apart when she realized he had no money left, no prospects. She left him before the baby was born. took him to court for child support he could barely afford. By October, David had lost everything. His business, his home, his reputation. He was living in a one-bedroom apartment in a part of town he used to sneer at, working as a sales associate at a commercial real estate firm, making a fraction of what he used to earn. I heard all of this through Marcus, who kept tabs on them, not out of cruelty, but because knowledge is power. One afternoon in late November, I was having coffee with Harrison at his estate when Marcus called. "Patricia Harrison passed away this morning," he said. "Heart failure. David was with her. I felt nothing, no sadness, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure." "She made her choices," I said, "and she lived with the consequences." A year after the surgery, I stood in the lobby of Sterling Tower, the headquarters of Harrison's company, looking at the directory board. My name was listed on the 5th floor, Rachel Harper, Vice President of Acquisitions. I had earned the title. I worked for it, learned the business from the ground up, proved myself in meetings and negotiations. I was no longer the girl who sold linens in a boutique. I was a woman who built things. The scar on my left side had faded to a thin silver line. I used to hate it. I used to see it as a mark of my naivety. Now I see it differently. It was proof that I had survived, that I had been broken and rebuilt myself stronger. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. Lunch today, I smiled. Jessica had become one of my closest friends, along with several women I had met through Harrison's network. Strong, intelligent women who had faced their own battles and come out victorious. I am not alone anymore. I have a family, not by blood, but by choice. That evening I had dinner with someone new, Dr. Thomas Reed, a pediatric surgeon I had met at a charity gala 2 months ago. We had been seeing each other casually. Coffee, walks, dinners, nothing rushed, nothing desperate. Just two people getting to know each other honestly. He knew my story. I had told him everything on our 3rd date, about the surgery, the betrayal, the lawsuit. I needed him to know who I was and what I had been through. He listened without judgment. Then he told me his own story, a divorce 5 years ago, a wife who had cheated, the slow process of learning to trust again. We understand each other, I realized. We both know that love is not about grand gestures or promises. It is about honesty, respect, showing up. Over dessert, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I am not in a hurry," he said, "but I want you to know that I see a future here." If you do, I looked at him, at his kind eyes, at the way he looked at me like I was valuable, not because of what I could give him, but because of who I was. "I see it too," I said. The following week, I received an invitation in the mail, heavy card stock, gold embossed lettering, a gala for the Sterling Foundation, black tie. I have been to several of these events now. They no longer intimidated me. I knew how to navigate them, how to speak to donors and board members, how to represent Harrison's vision. But this invitation was different. At the bottom, in Harrison's handwriting, was a note. "I am announcing the new executive director of the foundation that night. I hope you will accept the position. You have earned it." I called him immediately. "Harrison, I cannot possibly." "You can," he interrupted. I heard the smile in his voice. "You have spent the last year learning, growing, proving yourself. The foundation needs someone with vision and heart. That is you, Rachel." I accepted. The gala was held at the Mint Museum. Hundreds of guests, city officials, business leaders, philanthropists. I wore a midnight blue gown that Harrison's stylist had helped me choose. My hair was swept up. Diamond earrings that Harrison had given me as a gift sparkled in the light. I walked through the crowd with confidence, shaking hands, making conversation, representing something bigger than myself. Midway through the evening, I saw him, David. He was standing near the bar in an ill-fitting rental tux, looking out of place and desperate. He had not been invited. He had crashed. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he started walking toward me. "Rachel," said when he reached me. His voice was strained. "Please, I need to talk to you." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who had promised to love me, who had used me, who had thrown me away like garbage. He looked smaller now, diminished. "There is nothing to say, David," I replied calmly. "Please," he said again. His eyes were red. "I made a mistake. I was young and stupid, and I listened to my mother when I should have listened to my heart. I never stopped loving you. Amanda was a mistake, the baby, all of it. I want to fix this. I want us to try again." Security was already moving toward us. Harrison had seen the interaction and signaled them. But before they arrived, I looked David in the eye and said what I needed to say. "You did not make a mistake, David. You made a choice. You chose to lie. You chose to use me. You chose to value your mother's life and your own convenience over my dignity. And now you are living with the consequences of those choices just like I lived with them. The difference is I survived. I rebuilt it. You are still looking for someone to save you. He opened his mouth to respond, but security arrived. So you need to leave. This is a private event. They escorted him out. I watched him go. I watched the doors close behind him, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just peace. Harrison appeared at my side. Are you all right? He asked. I am perfect, I said, and I meant it. 2 years after the surgery, I stood at a small cemetery in Richmond, Virginia, where my parents were buried. I had not been back since I was 18, could not afford it, could not bear it, but now I can. I placed white roses on their graves, told them about my life, about the pain and the betrayal, about Harrison and Thomas and the family I had built, about the woman I had become. I think you would be proud, I whispered. I hope you will be proud. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere a bird sang. I felt a sense of peace I had not felt in years. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. Dinner tonight? My place. I am cooking. I smiled. Yes, I replied. I will bring wine. As I walked back to my car, I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who believed that love meant sacrifice without question. The one who thought she had to earn her place in the world. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who demanded honesty, who built her own family, who gave generously but protected herself fiercely. The scar on my side would always be there, a reminder, but it was no longer a source of shame. It was a badge of honor, proof that I had faced the worst and survived, proof that I had been broken and healed stronger, proof that I had given a gift and received one in return, not from the people who took, but from the people who valued what I had given. I am Rachel Harper. I am a survivor. I am a fighter. I am loved. And I am free. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that betrayal does not define you. How you rise from it does. And if you are facing something similar, know that you are stronger than you think, that you deserve honesty and respect and love that does not require you to lose yourself, that your worth is not determined by what you can give away but by who you are. Hold on to that. And never let anyone convince you otherwise.